We're now going to look at All My Sons from Arthur Miller, and uh, I'm going to explore this text with you um, from a very interesting angle, okay, which is going to be the idea of what's called the Faustian bargain, or another way that it's uh, normally sort of talked about is doing a deal with the devil. Okay, doing a deal with the devil. All right, so you can see in the image. Okay, you can see you have this is supposed to be Keller, the main character. So you have Keller, and he's shaking hands with, you could say, like the evil version of himself, or he's shaking hands with the devil. And in between them both is a pile of money. See the money in the background? Okay, so the sort of fundamental way of understanding this play, or one of the most key ways of understanding this play, okay, is to understand it as, like I said, um, as every character, essentially, every main character, every member of the family engages in a sort of deal where they deceive themselves or they don't tell the truth. Okay, they lie about something in order to try and get something that they want in return. Okay, this is what's known as, what, like I said, for the Faustian bargain, or another way of saying it is doing a deal with the devil. Okay, so what it's known as. So the idea is that a person will give up something, and it's called the Faustian bargain because it comes from the story just called Faust, which is an old story, it's a couple hundred years old, in which a man does a deal with the devil, that he'll get magical powers and magical wealth, the ability to fly, all those type of things, in return for selling his soul. Yeah. So basically, he gets to enjoy himself for a while in the short term, and in the long term, he goes to hell forever. Yeah, that's the idea. So every character in this play, so the reason I'm laying out like this is because this is how I want you to understand it. If you understand the play this way, it makes it a lot easier to understand why the characters act the way they do and why things fall apart in the end. It's because every character in the play essentially has a deal with the devil in their own way. In other words, every single character in the play lies about something in order for them to try to get what they want. Okay, so they sacrifice something. Yeah, like they sacrifice, you could say, part of themselves, telling the truth. They lie about something. Okay, they deceive themselves, deceive other people in order to try and get what they want, to get the thing that they desire. Okay, that's the Faustian bargain, that's selling your soul to the devil. Okay, so what we're gonna see in this play is what happens when you do that. And uh it focused on a family, okay, the Keller family. Uh I don't actually know the second name yet, but Keller's the head of the family. I think it's the Keller family. Anyway, it doesn't matter. The point is, it's focused on a family. The head of the family, main character of the story, is Keller. Keller is an older man. He's about 60, and Keller is a businessman. Excuse me. And basically, the story revolves around how Keller has a factory making parts for the war, specifically parts for planes in the war. And he has a moment where he's told that some of the plane parts are like faulty, and um he has a big order, okay, which is he needs to fulfill with his factory. And if he says that basically he can't fulfill it, because the plane parts are faulty, then he risks essentially losing a bunch of money. And also some, what do you call it? Facing some backlash, like, why didn't you get them ready? Why are they faulty? He'll have to deal with some consequences. He'll have to take responsibility for some things, some mistakes that he made, if he be honest. Whereas what he decides to do instead of that is he decides just to basically, excuse me, ship the parts off anyway, or ship the yeah. So not basically tell anyone that the parts are faulty, but just use them anyway. And as a result of this, as a result of him hiding this truth, the faulty plane parts and the planes being made and shipped off, uh, excuse me, a bunch of pilots end up dying. Bunch of pilots end up dying because the planes explode. The planes, fall out of the sky. They blow up, and um, One of these pilots is in fact Keller's own son. So the Faustian bargain, the deal with the devil that Keller does is that he lies about, and this is only the beginning. He has like maybe two, you could say. His initial one is that he lies about the plane parts being faulty in order for him to maintain his wealth, to make a bunch of money, okay, from the order, or keep the money that he's gotten for the order, and also to maintain his reputation as like a very successful, very intelligent, very, respectable businessman who can be trusted with big orders, who's doing business with the government and all that type of stuff. So he lies about the plane parts, and then the thing that carries on in terms of the play, okay, the rest of the play, what drives the narrative of the rest of the play is that he lies about what happened in that moment where he made the call and he told the person, just send off the plane parts. And instead of him going to jail for this, instead it's the father of Anne, okay, it's father of Annie, who ends up taking the blame and going to jail on Keller's behalf. Okay, so Keller gets away with it. So his deal with the devil, okay, is that in order to try to, excuse me, avoid taking legal consequences, and in order to what does he want? Yeah, that's what you need to ask yourself with each of these characters. What does the character want? So for Keller, what he wants, okay, is not go to jail and for his reputation to not be ruined. Okay, his reputation would be ruined if everyone finds out that he killed his own son and also killed these pilots, over 20 of them, because of his bad decision. And finally, what he wants most, I would say personally, what he wants most is that he wants his family to look at him in the way that he looks in this picture, in the way that he's described in this slide. He wants his family, okay, to look at him as if he is a man's man. Like it says there, a man among men. He wants his family to look up to him, to see him as the leader. He wants his family and also his neighbor, his community. He wants them all to look up to him and to see him as a man that has, been self-made, been successful, that is wealthy, that they can come to for their problems. If you look at how he talks throughout the play, excuse me, if you look at how he talks throughout the play, you'll notice that he talks with a very kind of uh, extroverted sort of man's man, charismatic type of flair in his words. He's complimenting people. He compliments sort of Frank at the beginning. He's like, "Oh, you're, the stars don't know when to come out except that you're here." He's like flirting with, different women in like a funny kind of way. So he's like a man's man. He's like, that's the image that he wants to put across. It's the same, which is very interesting. If you've read other plays or watched other plays by Miller, as excuse me, Willie Loman from Death of a Salesman, who is also extremely desperate to be seen and viewed as a man's man, to be respected by his family, especially his sons. You notice the same, you notice the parallel here also, in that Keller wants to be respected, loved by his family, admired by his family. It's a good word, admired, especially by his sons, his son, and especially now by his remaining son, because one of them has obviously been killed due to his mistake. Okay, so Keller lies in order to keep all of that going. Okay, so his reputation doesn't get ruined, he doesn't go to jail, and so his family and community look up to him, admire him, and respect him. Okay, now of course his decision is not just limited in its effect to him. It obviously impacts directly other people. So the first people it directly impacts obviously is the pilots who die because of it, because the planes, are faulty, so they don't work properly, and then they fall out of the sky. Excuse me. But beyond that, in terms of his own family, his family is also affected by his decision in that they suspect that he has done this kind of thing, that he's done something wrong. Okay, but they don't tell themselves the truth about it. Okay, so they suspect it, but they never admit it. Okay, so this is going to be now leaning more towards their deal with the devil, their Faustian bargain. And the first family member we're going to talk about, okay, is Chris. So Chris is the son of Keller. And what's going on in this slide is you can see that Keller is trying to convince Chris that the money is all legit, that the money has been earned in a legit way. And he knows that Chris is suspicious of him, and he knows that Chris has his doubts, which is why he is trying to convince him so hard. And you can see that he says, I think you're ashamed of the money. Nothing is wrong with the money. He has to try and explain it. And when you look at the stage directions, you see that he is emotional. Okay, he says these things with emotion because he is feeling guilty, and also now he feels embarrassed and sad that his son suspects him, and knows the truth about what he has done. It's the same, okay, again, parallel with Willie Loman, when Willie knows that um, his son has found out that he had an affair with the woman, cheated on his wife. Yeah, his son finds this out, and Willie recognizes that guilt. Willie recognizes that guilt, and he is embarrassed that his son knows the secret about him, and it's actually what destroys their relationship. So it fractures the relationship. Even though when even though when his son was younger, they had a very strong bond. Okay, so again, you see the similarities between the two plays. Okay, uh, now we come to Chrissy's deal with the devil directly. So Chris is the son of Keller, and Chris wants to marry. This is very strange. Chris wants to marry his dead brother's fiance. Okay, so his brother Larry was going to marry Anne, and when his brother passed away, and I believe it's been some years since he passed, Chris now basically has sort of proposed or sort of pursued Anne and is now intent on marrying her. So in a way, excuse me, Chris also has multiple layers of sort of, what do you want to say, bad things about his character, in that it's a bit weird that he wants to marry his dead brother's, you know, fiance, wife, whatever. It's kind of strange. But in any case, his deal with the devil, okay, his Faustian bargain is that he, to some extent, knows his father has done something wrong. And Gaelic says, I suspected my father and did nothing about it. He knows very strongly, or he has a very strong instinct feeling that his dad has done something wrong and that there's an innocent man in jail because of it. In other words, Anne's father. But he doesn't do anything about it. Why? Because the thing that he desires is to marry Anne. Yes. And excuse me, if he admits that his dad has done this crime, okay, has done this thing that's wrong, then he will have to admit that Anne's father is in jail because of his dad's actions. And therefore, Anne obviously will never marry him. She won't like him anymore, obviously. If so, this is what's meant, okay, by a deal with the devil. It's that you do something which you know is wrong because you want something, or because you want to stop something from happening. Okay? It's doing something which you know is wrong in order to get something else which you really want. He lies to himself or doesn't tell the truth about his father's crime, big crime, in order that he can get Anne to stay in love with him and to marry him. You see? Now, and just in terms of the quote analysis, the placement of the word and, the conjunction, if you want to call it, the placement of the and basically is right in the middle of the sentence. And the way that you can look at this is that it demonstrates his sort of split, okay, his dissonance, if you want to call it that. In that one side of him knows the truth, makes him feel guilty, makes him feel bad, makes him say things like, excuse me, I can never fully reach out for something because when I do it, people get hurt. Makes him feel an innate sense of guilt that he's living on blood money, essentially. Any of his father's money that's helped him in any way has someone's blood on it. So living with that heavy burden, okay. And then the other side of him, being in love with Anne, knowing that if he admits the truth, says the truth, the reality, he will have to also let go of her, and he will have to um she won't like him anymore. Yeah, she'll hate him obviously because her father's been in jail because of his family. Yes. Now the key with the Faustian bargain, okay, is that, or deal with the devil, is that the deal with the devil is one that never works out. Okay, that's the idea with the deal with the devil. It never works out. The point is that it only works for a very short amount of time. Like with Faust, he has a short amount of enjoyment when he gets these powers. And the idea is that after this short amount of time and enjoyment, then you spend an eternity in hell. That's the deal. Have a lot of fun right now, and then afterwards, eternity in hell. That's the idea. Now, when you apply it to like real life, you apply it to like what's happening in this play. The idea is that they get the illusion. There's also something about Faust now. They get the illusion of having the thing that they want. So they never actually get the thing that they want. Even in Faust, he never actually gets any magical powers or powers to alter reality. The only thing he gets really, if you study the text, is he gets an illusion of these things. He gets an illusion. He feels a taste of these things, this power. Excuse me. Keller feels a taste of his family respecting him. He has a taste of being rich, being wealthy, but they never get the full thing. Okay, like Chris, he gets a taste of having Annie like him a lot. Yes, but they never get to capture the full thing, the full reality, because it is a deal with the devil. That's the idea, and so it is built on foundations which are not real. It's like classically speaking, devils and demons and you know spirits and things. Much of the time, their primary power, excuse me, has always been described as something like illusion or trickery, something like that. Yeah, like either that they could shapeshift, turn into different things. Okay, like in different cultures, you have the idea of like jinns or excuse me, back in the day, you had the idea of like demons shifting, shape shifting into different things which aren't real. Okay, so like walking in the masks, walking in the form of people, like in Halloween, the idea that devils come down and they, excuse me, they appear to be different things. They can trick you, so it's an illusion. It's not real. Okay, or that they had the power to create illusions, um, um, in that to make you think you see something which you don't actually see. That was the primary classical power, as described in different mythologies, and the idea flows through okay into this text and into other texts, which is that the person never actually gets the thing that they want. They only get tricked into thinking that they have it. Okay, so nowhere in this text, excuse me, nowhere in this text does Keller ever get the respect and true full love and admiration of his family. He only gets to imagine that he has it, even though all of them, right from the beginning, as you're seeing in that thing I just showed you a minute ago with Chris, excuse me, all of them right from the beginning have a level of dislike towards him and suspicion towards him. Okay? From the beginning, Chris never has Anne, excuse me, because she always, okay, right from the start, okay, she always has a suspicion that Keller could be guilty. She just doesn't believe it. Okay, this is her Faustian bargain, which is that she denies the truth to herself, okay, which people talk about, and which her brother later on in the play comes to the house, calls first and comes to the house, tells her Keller's the one that put her dad in jail. He's guilty. So she has these people in her ear, okay, right from the beginning, even from, you know, before the play starts. So she always has some level of knowledge, and Chris picks up on this, okay, and he says, I know that you'll always be suspicious of me. You won't ever fully trust me. Um, so so Chris never actually gets her love yet. He never gets her full, complete, undivided love like his brother got. He only ever gets an illusion of it. Okay, he only ever gets an illusion of it to imagine it for a little while. And this is the thing about the deal with the devil, which I was going to mention in the beginning, is that the illusion always falls apart. Okay, the illusion always falls apart. And that's exactly what happens in the play, which we're going to see, okay, at the end. So, what they're talking about here what they're talking about here, okay, is Annie's here. She's going to get married. She's basically asking, excuse me, Lydia's asking, like, is she going to get married again? You know, I thought she was engaged to Larry. And then it's interesting, Keller, this is the father of Larry, says she can't mourn a boy forever, indicating that he already knows that Larry's dead, even though the news isn't confirmed. Okay, so it sort of gives it away in the beginning. And there's a little commentary here just on the sort of terrible nature of the war. I'm not going to talk about that um, here today, I don't think, because I want to focus just on this other idea of deception and so on. Okay, excuse me. Okay, now the final character who also takes part in this self-deception or deal making, um, this negative deal making is Kate. Kate. Okay, so Kate is the wife of Keller and the mother of Chris and Larry. And Kate's deal with the devil is that she doesn't admit the truth, which she strongly knows. She strongly knows, okay? She doesn't admit this truth, nor does she look into it, okay? Because she wants to believe that her son, Larry, is still alive, okay? If she admits the truth that her husband has sold these bad plane parts, which led to the death of pilots, she must simultaneously admit that one of these planes, these faulty planes, had her son in it, and that is why her son has disappeared, because he's dead. So she'll have to admit her son is dead if she's going to admit the truth about what her husband has done. You see? So really you could say, the Faustian bargain, the deal with the devil, really it always comes about because it's like there's a cost to paying there's a cost to telling the truth. That's the idea. There's a cost to telling the truth. Some truth is easy to tell. Some truth is very easy to tell, like it's a fact about something. Two and two is four. Uh, India is in the continent of Asia. These are easy. Truths are easy to tell, right? But excuse me, other truths are difficult to tell because they come with a cost. They come with a cost. For example, for all of these characters, if they were to tell the truth, they must sacrifice something that they really want. It's a big cost. So for her being a mother, she would have to sacrifice the idea that her son is still alive. She'd have to give that up in order to tell the truth. It brings up a very interesting, like, metaphysical question, which is, why is that the case, right? Why is that the case? You would think that telling the truth would be easy and lying would be hard, right? You would think that telling the truth would be easy and lying would be hard, but oftentimes it's the opposite. Lying is easy and telling the truth is hard, which is why a lot of people lie and why a lot of times people don't tell the truth. Makes sense? Um, but you can see, okay, that even though the lying is easy and it gives you a comforting delusion, comforting illusion, long term it makes everything fall apart. So maybe that's the long term benefit of telling the truth is that at least you don't have the big crash. Maybe you have a little crash and it's very extremely painful, or a big crash on your own, but you don't have the big crash of everything. Because what's gonna happen, okay, in this family is everything's gonna fall apart. None of these characters get what they want. The whole thing comes crashing down, and every single character gets sort of destroyed in some way. That's what's gonna happen. Okay, so she says now here, excuse me, to Chris, your brother's alive. This is her like laying out her Faustian bargain. She's laying out her deal with the devil. Your brother's alive because if he's not, your father killed him. And by this quote, this statement, you can see the hatred, below the surface, beneath the surface that she has towards her husband because she knows the truth. Yeah, she just doesn't want to say it. She doesn't want to admit it to herself. Okay, okay. Now at the end of the play, okay, at the end of the play, what happens is the whole thing falls apart. Keller kills himself because he basically realizes that his sons no longer like him, love him, respect him. His wife hates him. The truth has come out that he's been the one that's responsible for the plane parts, not Anne's father. Anne has left, okay, with her brother. So Chris is no longer going to be able to marry Anne. His dream is destroyed. Kate has to let go of the idea that her son is alive. Her dream is destroyed. And Keller's decision, being the impetus of all this, he feels all of the weight at that moment. And he now is faced, okay, with the choice, right? Where he could still do something to redeem himself, which would be to face his mistake, face his bad action, and deal with the consequences of it. So the noble thing for him to do at this point would have been to say, I did it, I'm guilty, and now let me be punished for doing it. Okay, now let me go to jail forever. Okay, let me spend my life in jail if I have to serve and try to make good of what I did. Okay, facing up to reality and the consequences of your actions. But instead of that, he takes the other option, okay, which is to kill himself, to escape, the easy way out, because he doesn't want to face his reputation being destroyed. He doesn't want to face the jail time. He doesn't want to face the hatred of his family. All of these things and the image that he had of himself, the illusion that he had of himself when he made the deal with the devil, he doesn't want to see that disappear. He wants to hold on to it. And so he kills himself in order to not have it disappear and not have to deal with reality. Okay? So after he does this, at the end of the play, Kate, his wife, says to her son to not think about this, what happened, and to essentially move on with your life. And the way that she phrases this is not to say, don't think about your father, don't think about Keller. She says, don't think about it. It. She collectivizes everything that happened, as well as her husband, into that word it, which in a sense dehumanizes him and again illustrates sort of her hatred of him and her own sort of wanting to minimize it or at least not think about it yet, to push it into the past and to not think about it anymore. So, and the curtain closes, excuse me, after this. The curtain closes right after this. So you can see, okay, the whole thing falls apart. Okay, the whole thing falls apart. The best plans, okay, as the quote says something, the best plans of mice and men, the whole thing falls apart. Yes, the whole thing unravels and falls apart. And that's the idea, okay, with it about, you know, the deal with the devil. That's the idea, is that it always falls apart. Okay. There is no winner except you could say the devil himself. And obviously I'm talking metaphorically. I'm not saying there's actually you could do a deal with the devil. I'm talking metaphorically. But the idea is that there is no winner. Okay. When you lie about reality, when you lie about the truth, you will ultimately be harmed by it long term, one way or another, basically. So, it brings up an interesting, question philosophically, because it's a hard position to be in, thinking about, well, I don't want to be in a position where I have to deal with telling the truth and facing something bad for it. And I don't want to be in a position where, I have to lie and then face something bad for that. So philosophically, we're faced with that question. Okay, how do you solve this? How do you solve this? Right? And if we look at the characters, I think the way you solve this pretty much is you just don't allow yourself to be caught up in the illusion in the first place, basically. So the whole thing started when Keller decided to send off the plane parts, even though he knew they were faulty. If he had just made the decision that he wasn't going to send off the plane parts and he took the L, the only thing that would happen is he would have lost some money. His factory possibly would have had some, you know, would have had some blowback for not doing the work. But ultimately, that would have been it. Yeah, that would have been it. He would have been able to build up his reputation again. People would have liked him even more because they would have said, at least you didn't send off the plane parts just for profit, right? You kept some boys safe. You kept our son safe. So thank you for that. And then eventually, because the war was going on anyway, the government still would have had to use him, you know? Uh, and so he could have built up his factory again, and the whole story doesn't happen. Makes sense. So, and the same with Chris, he could have found a different woman instead of Anne. Then he wouldn't have gotten into the situation. And with the mother, she wouldn't have had to face that deal in the first place because her son still would have been alive, right? Because he wouldn't have gotten into the plane. So you can see, okay, that if you just don't let yourself get deluded in the first place, if you just, admit the reality or tell the truth when it's like small, yes, when the truth is small, then it's easy to deal with that. You can bounce back and it's not painful, really, that painful. It's a little bit painful, but not really. But it's when you let it get big, then it becomes destructive. A whole guy's family got destroyed because he didn't do it. Okay, so I guess that's a good justification for, telling the truth, um, if you needed one.